Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay, Atlanta's new standard in payroll. Now, here's your host. Hey.com. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today on the show, we have Matt McConnell with Intradiem. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Lee.
Before we get too far into things, tell us a little bit about Intradiem. How are you serving folks?
Intradiem is an automation company. We provide automation for customer service teams. Lee, the easiest way to think about Intradiem and what our automation does is right now you can, anything you can think of, you can order off of a site like Amazon and it shows up at your door in 24 hours or less, literally anything you can think of, but pick up that package and try to get service on it. And it's a very different experience than that Amazon experience. Our goal at Intradiem is to make that service experience as effortless and instantaneous as that product experience that you enjoy with Amazon today.
Now, the reason I think that Amazon services that way is it was critically important for them to behave in that manner. Are you finding that the reason that customer service isn't have that same kind of experience is because it isn't that big of a priority for firms?
Well, it has become more of a priority, but when you look more closely at it, there's a huge disparity. The average person in the developed world will spend 123 days of their lives on hold, in line, or sitting at home waiting for a service tech. And it's crazy that that's true in 2022. So when you look at the product experience and the service experience and say, why is it so different? We see one glaring difference in how the two have matured. There was a tremendous investment in the 1980s and 1990s in manufacturing, in warehousing and distribution, in automation that makes that possible, where you can think of the most obscure part on your vacuum cleaner and order it off Amazon and get it in 24 hours. That's amazing. And it's all possible because of those huge investments right across manufacturing and warehousing and distribution and automation. When you look at service delivery in customer care, phone call centers and retail and field service, those investments in automation weren't made. So Intradiem is in the automation business, and we bring the same automation that manufacturers enjoyed that was in the physical world into the sort of software world in the sort of virtual productivity of service delivery.
Now, does your software help a firm, the firm's people? Because at some point there's a human interaction. I mean, or do you eliminate the human interaction and you're able to give good customer service or help your clients have better customer interaction and experience via software and automation? Or is it a tool that helps the human communicate better and more efficiently and effectively with the other human who is having whatever issue they're having?
It's the latter, Lee. At Intradiem, we believe in technology at the service of humans. And if you've interacted with a chatbot, you've very likely had a very bad experience like the rest of us. The fully automated service experience is a dream for the future. I think companies have tried to deliver it and tried to push us into those channels, and it's just not, it doesn't deliver. And I think that the service needs to be in the center of the service, that human needs to be at the center of the service experience. And so Intradiem provides automation that makes those humans more productive in delivering, significantly more productive in delivering that service.
So what was the genesis of the idea? I mean, people have been frustrated with this forever. What inspired you to say, okay, let's figure this out?
Yeah, it started many years ago. I'm an industrial engineer, and industrial engineering is all about making systems more productive, more effective. And I just had this burring under my saddle with just the service experience I was having. And when I really dug into it, discovered that it's really just it's an interesting math problem. And the problem that these brands have that we all do business with, our banks, our telecoms, our insurance companies, is that they have the demand that you and I put on those brands as their customers is very dynamic and increasingly unpredictable. But the supply that's used to meet that demand, these workforces, these humans in these workforces that are used to meet that demand, is by comparison pretty flat-footed. And the easiest way to sort of visualize what we're doing for these very large workforces that usually number in the tens of thousands, if you've ever been in a grocery store when all the checkout lines were, long, full of people, and someone gets on the microphone and, kind of calls all the cashiers to the front because the lines are so long. In essence, that's what Intradiem's doing at a massive scale. It's adjusting the supply to meet the demand. So when the demand spikes unexpectedly, we can move these workforces to the demand. When the demand drops off unexpectedly, we can shift the supply to other areas of work that are, or other queues that are higher demanded, or send them home early. All of those are examples of just making that supply as dynamic as the demand delivers a huge increase in productivity for Intradiem's clients.
So now, is your service one of which you have a call center or you have a pile of humans at the ready to be deployed at where there's a need? So if client A has a big need today, right this second, you can deploy the right number of people there, so it's the right people at the right time? Or do you work with your client's existing call center with their people and you just train them better, or you give them tools that make them more efficient?
It's the latter, Lee. Intradiem does not provide staffing. We're a pure play cloud software company. And fortunately, these companies, if you can sort of roll the tape back, pre-Intradiem for our clients, they had a choice to make in this supply-demand equation. Either they could overstaff because the supply was so flat-footed when the demand came in, you just sort of had to staff all these extra people to try to meet these peaks in demand. Or you could just understaff and underserve your customers. And fortunately, I guess for all of us over the years, these companies overstaffed. And so when we bring our software, when Intradiem's software shows up at one of these big banks or big insurers or big telecoms, they've already got lots of staff. In fact, way too much staff. We make the staff more productive, and they've got staff to spare, frankly. And so we don't need to supply any staff. We just supply the technology that makes that staff more dynamic to meet that dynamic demand that these businesses have.
So can you explain for the listener what maybe a day in the life is pre-Intradiem and a day in the life post-Intradiem with your solution for that person that is that frontline person for this organization?
Yeah, and let me give a really specific example because there are dozens and dozens of what we refer to as use cases that Intradiem software can deliver to make these workforces more productive. But a perfect example, a day in the life of a call center agent. Let's say you've been working all morning and taking calls, you're a call center agent, and you're 5 minutes from your break. It's been a tough morning. You've taken 15 calls. And remember, people don't call centers because they want to tell you you're doing a great job. So it's a difficult job. And you're 5 minutes from a well-earned break. But the queues that you're serving, let's say the average handle time is 9 minutes. And so as an agent, if you take that next call, you're going to be late for your break. And these workforces are so tightly managed that you not only are late for your break, but you have to fill out a form describing why you're late for your break. It's called being out of adherence. And so it's insult to injury. And so what over the years contact center agents have learned to do is play games so they don't get that next call and they can go to their break on time. So it's a big agent dissatisfier. People, that if they do the right thing, they're late for their break. They kind of have to hide in the system. But it's also for the company, they're losing 5, 7, 8, 10 minutes before every break. every lunch, every end of shift with these agents kind of gaming the system. And so as an example of a use case, Intradiem can spot that situation where Matt is 5 minutes before his break, but the queues he's serving are 10 minutes on average. Automatically pull his break forward 5 minutes, shift his state, as it's called in the system, to break, send a message to Matt and his supervisor. Nobody's filling out paperwork. Matt gets his full break. Customers get served. And it's a big agent satisfier, but the company picks up 5 or 10 minutes of productivity for every agent before every break, every end of shift, and every lunch. And that use case alone, and our customers, a big cable company or a big bank, is millions and millions and millions of dollars saved. But everybody's more productive and everybody's more satisfied. So that's just a really specific example. And there are dozens of those where you can apply automation into this workforce to make it significantly more productive.
So what are some symptoms for the folks that aren't aware of Intradiem that maybe they should be aware of them? Like, what are some of the kind of pain points that they're having now where a call to you and your team might be the best move?
Yeah, I think right now, Lee, the symptom that is the most pronounced in our customers and our target, our target market customers that aren't yet using Intradiem, is because of the Great Resignation. There's a big shortage of contact center agents, and so they're having a difficult time hiring. But they also have very high attrition. And so high attrition is a symptom of agent dissatisfaction and challenges of just dealing with, usually upset customers and a very rigid way of being managed and just constant pressure. And so Intradiem, is a pressure relief valve. It really drives up agent satisfaction. So that's one. The other one is just dwindling productivity. Our customers see handle times creeping up. They see all kinds of productivity measures going in the wrong direction. When you're short on people, there's this phenomenon that happens. Work handle times, as they call it in contact centers, tend to grow. And so you end up with, as in a contact center world, decreasing productivity. So that's another symptom we see. So reducing agent satisfaction, decreasing productivity, and then, of course, decreasing customer satisfaction.
Now, is decreasing customer satisfaction, is that an obvious kind of metric, or is it something that can be hidden in other areas and they may not kind of connect the dots?
There are lots of measures that companies with customer service teams look at to measure customer satisfaction. It's things as simple as high abandonment rates. And I'm tired of sitting on hold. I'm gonna, that's called abandonment. All the way through, customer satisfaction surveys and customers, churning, leaving that business because they're so dissatisfied. So there's a lot of measures that companies use to measure customer satisfaction that are being affected by just challenges in, as I mentioned earlier, this supply and demand imbalance that happens in contact centers.
Right, but is that a leading indicator or a lagging indicator?
Well, some are leading and some are lagging. There's a lot of, you've probably experienced, as many people have, there's a lot of surveying of customers that goes on. If you'll hang on, you can do a customer satisfaction survey and tell us how your experience was after the call. There's a lot of that goes on, which is more of a leading indicator. And then, of course, the lagging indicator is customers churning. So there are a variety of measures. Some are leads and some are lags.
Now, is the call centers evolving into allowing the people that are on the front lines to work out of their own home to be remote, or is it still that these folks are going into an actual center and they're all together in one place?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Lee. As we entered the pandemic, if you think about a contact center, if you've ever seen one or seen a picture of one, people are sitting very close together. It is a petri dish for COVID-19. So as soon as the pandemic hit, these contact centers had to figure out very quickly how to get people to work from home. And for the most part, they're still there. And a lot of companies have figured out they can deliver their customer service with agents sitting in their homes. And many of our customers are going to stay that way, or at least leave a large portion of their workforce in work from home mode.
And your service can allow for that?
Yes, it does. Prior to the pandemic, we were already cloud-based. And Intradiem was a solution that could be deployed to call centers all over the world, and including work from home situations. And so that's continued. But what we did see as a result of the pandemic is some shifting in the use cases that customers prioritized with Intradiem's product. As I mentioned, there's dozens of use cases available on our platform. And during the pandemic, as agents shifted to work from home, there became workforce shortages and things like that. So there's a lot of pressure on agents. And so there were times during the pandemic where our customers prioritized use cases that were more agent satisfiers. And there were times during the pandemic, well, I guess we're still in it, but at the tail of it, I guess, there were times in the pandemic where customers prioritized productivity use cases. So it really depended on the situation. The architecture of a product sits in the cloud, and we can serve people anywhere, work from home or in the office. But the flavor and mix of the use cases automation use cases they deployed depended on what was going on in that moment in time for their contact centers.
So what about Intradiem? Were you forced to go remote for the pandemic?
We were. We took a decision March 13th of 2020 to shift to work from home, and we have stayed that way ever since.
And was that a difficult transition to keep the culture of the organization while everybody was remote?
Lee, I thought it would be more difficult than it was. It was a pleasant surprise that in many ways it reinforced our culture. We've moved to what we call a remote first model. And so we've stayed in this remote mode because it's what our employees wanted. And we have sort of prioritized that into the way we work because it has worked really well. So we shifted to it and didn't miss a beat. And it's been really a big a big employee satisfier for our employees.
Now, how do you kind of thread the needle when it comes to now the world is your oyster, right? If you're remote, now you can get employees from anywhere. How do you kind of keep everybody on the same page and buying into the culture? Because that, to me, is a challenge moving forward as people embrace this remote first, that people can be anywhere. So how do you keep them, kind of making Intradiem at the fore and really immersing them in the culture of the organization?
It's a great question, Lee, and we've worked really hard on that. So there's a number of different tactics. The first thing I would say is there's really no handbook because this is new for companies there have not been in the history, a lot of companies that have this kind of fully remote or remote first model. And so the company has pulled together with our employees to kind of invent and write the handbook, if you will, on being remote first. There are some things you lose of just relationships you build with people that you see in the office every day. But before the pandemic, we probably had a third of our employees that were outside of our headquarters office to begin with. And now, as you mentioned, we're hiring from everywhere. And I think by the end of this year, we'll be 70 to 80% outside of Atlanta, where our headquarters office is. And as a result, we were already moving towards a more remote model as a company. But communication is a big, important piece. We do these town halls every couple of weeks that are really foundational for communication and culture building. But we've really worked hard on when you go to this fully remote model, the things that used to be, this is a great example, the things that used to be drop-ins, somebody would just drop by in your office and have a conversation. Those things turn into meetings. And now you've got all these meetings on your calendar, and you still have a job to do. And so we've had to establish norms for meetings and for communication tools. So, different people have different expectations for, if I send you a text, I might think it's, I view that as an urgent thing, but you don't, but you may view Slack or email as urgent. And so we've had to establish norms for meetings and communication tools and hours and calendars and things like that. But what I would tell you is it's working well. The data, we had a record year last year. We have better retention than the peers. We're private equity funded. So the 20 or 30 companies that are in the same portfolio we have the best retention in the portfolio of our employees. And the employee satisfaction has never been higher. Our employee NPS scores are in the 60s now, which is a very high employee NPS score. And so we feel really good about what we've done. We've still got work to do. Intradiem there's some things we're still figuring out, but so far it's worked very, very well.
So what do you need more of? How can we help? Do you need more clients, more talent?
Yeah, I think it's both. We really believe in this. As I always say to people, okay, we're not curing cancer, but if we can give everybody in the world 123 days of their lives back, it is an enormous lift for mankind. And so we really believe in this vision of making the service experience effortless and instantaneous. And so we need both clients and we also want employees.
And regarding clients, what is the profile of an ideal client for Intradiem?
Yeah, a typical client typically has hundreds or thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of customer service employees, contact center employees. And they're typically, the brands that you think of, your bank, your insurance company, your telecom, your cable company, those kinds of companies. And I think, if you think about a bad customer experience you've had, those are great prospects for Intradiem. Similarly, on the employee side, people that are inspired to make change in the world, inspired to be in a company that cares about its employees and puts employees first, those are the kinds of employees that really love to work at Intradiem.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for sharing your story today. If somebody wants to get a hold of you or somebody on your team, what's the website?
The website is intradiem.com, INTRADIEM, intradiem.com.
All right. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Lee.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio.